What is courage and where can one find it? Can it be found in the ranks of war or in the ceaseless violence of it? For Viktor Frankl, the answer is different. A Holocaust survivor, he has been both a witness to the horrors of humanity and the courage of humanity withstanding the gruesome violence. Frankyl, a doctor, was one of the millions who lost their families and much more in the horrid war upon humanity, but also one among the many who never gave up. But what could, in such a hopeless condition, stop people from giving up on life? What did life have to offer which would seem worthy in return of this much of suffering? The answer is devastatingly simple: a purpose. Frankyl tells us that no matter how hard or impossible life gets, a person who sees a meaning in his life, a meaning in his suffering, will gain the will to live. And thus, even in the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps, while people threw themselves at the bare electric fences to get rid of their lives, there were many, thousands and thousands, who could see a meaning in their suffering. So what does one do? How does one find a purpose, a meaning? Frankyl gives us 3 ways. He says that the act of creation of any work or art gives human life meaning. Transcendence is thus the key to human life. Only by creating something of value, of doing a valuable deed like helping someone or something, can man find meaning in his life. Often an experience or encounter can change the course of one's life and thus add meaning to it. But last and not the least, meaning can be found in the suffering itself of the being. Frankyl points out at the misconception we have towards suffering in life. Suffering, he says, is not to be scorned at or to be looked at as an anomaly. Suffering is an unavoidable organic part of life, and it is in moving through this suffering, the attitude we take towards it, that true meaning can be found. So is suffering something we must seek out? Not really. Frankyl says that unless unavoidable, suffering should be cured of. There is no point in making one suffer if there can be an easy end to this suffering. That would be pure sadism, he says, and nothing could be found out of it. No. Frankyl is referring to the suffering that seems to have no purpose and cannot be avoided, like the death of a parent or a spouse. The suffering in such a case cannot be taken away. One has to suffer. However, the forte one presents in this suffering, the attitude one takes up in such a situation, is what gives the suffering value. What if they were suffering from a consuming disease? Would we like to watch them suffer more than they already had? What if we died first to avoid the suffering? Wouldn't that make them suffer even more? Seeing suffering from a different perspective is what helps people forgo it. Frankyl tells us how in the camps spirituality grew. He points at the usefulness of religious and spiritual beliefs in dealing with such unavoidable suffering, which, though by no means compulsory, often are extremely precious to such a mind. After suffering in the camps, a testament to humans' cruelty and shame, it would be but understandable if Frankyl would grow weary of human nature. However, on the contrary, Frankyl grows up immense faith in it. The kindness and courage of even a select few, whose hearts grew mellower and sweeter in such times of suffering, who would share that last bite of bread though themselves hungry for weeks, who would, despite their own suffering, sit down beside the bed of another in the last light of his life, are to Frankyl nothing less than trophies for the adoration of humanity. These instances of courage, however rare, tells him how possible it is to remain pure even in a situation of gross wrong. If even one example could be found, it would prove how human nature is not necessarily evil, but rather what one makes of it. Frankyl's book puts up the bricks in the monument of logotherapy and offers great insights into the human nature in the midst of gross violations of it, ranging from encountering this rancid world of concentration camps to growing apathetic day by day to trying to find a reason of this unimaginable suffering so undeservingly inflicted on him. Frankyl's book is a must-read for both its elucidation of life in the camps as well as exposition of human nature and courage in the midst of chaos of the Holocaust. Like the best literature set in a distraught world, Frankyl's man's search for meaning gives hope to us in our lives, which, if it could be found in the midst of the Holocaust, can be found anywhere. Read this classical piece of literature of hope to know more. If this video spoke to you, do like it and tell us more about it. Subscribe and share. Hope you have a great day.